Guilty on all counts for Officer Chauvin. As we look at a live look right outside Cup Foods, this is the location where George Floyd died last May of 2020. This is where it all began, and this is the scene here as at dusk here in Minneapolis. You've seen a lot of people waiting on the verdict, which came down just after 5 o'clock today, Eastern time. And you see that a lot of them still milling around. It's been relatively peaceful. The mob, it would appear, has been appeased for now. The Black Lives Matter and Antifa mob that has ransacked this country over the last year. I think we all know the impact that their actions have had on this verdict today. And the mob, as I said, has been appeased. We just saw the Reverend Jesse Jackson do a bit of a prayer. There have been a number of vigils, a lot of people commemorating the life of George Floyd. Obviously, the video, we've all seen it, of him dying is not something anybody wants to watch. I wouldn't say that anybody thinks that Officer Chauvin acted perfectly appropriately in this thing. Whether or not he deserved what happened here today in this verdict is yet to be determined. But we've seen a number of people gathering out here, a lot of the media as well. We've got Logan Raddick, who's over by the courthouse, a much quieter scene tonight. Logan, let's go to you live.
Hey, Rob, that is the case. Right now, we know that there could be potential unrest at that Floyd Memorial. It's a busier crowd there. But there's also the Brooklyn Center situation we're still monitoring with Dante Wright. A lot of people have mentioned that they're now wanting to turn their attention over to that situation. But here at the courthouse, a quiet scene after a busy day in Minneapolis. And we did see a protest really take over this city. They shut down streets. They had cars leading it, honking horns, people standing on cars and cheering on the jury's verdict today. We'll take a step out of the shot right now. I'll show you what we have behind us. There's a memorial here, not only for George Floyd, but other people who have died as a result of officer-involved incidents. And it says here, what if it was your father, your daughter, your son? So they're really playing to the emotions. But, Rob, the thing that we know is that people were telling us no matter what the verdict was today, there was going to be unrest. We heard people say, you can't stop the revolution. They said they want to make change in education and the medical field. So this is not just related to police brutality, as they said. They want to go a lot further than that. And they say that today was a stepping stone for their cause.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you see the people there listed behind you on there, just people killed in officer-involved shootings, which obviously represent a very, very small fraction of the thousands that are killed in inner-city crime every single year, but nobody's focusing on that. Logan, do you expect much? I mean, is anything else going to happen there tonight where you're at, or is this all moved over to the Cup Foods, which is not too far away?
Yeah, that's where it seems like it is right now, because it is after dark here in Minneapolis, and it's very quiet. Like I said, it was very busy right after the verdict came down, but it seems like it's moved out of here. It's also cold out, so some people might not want to be out in the elements. But we're going to continue to look at the Cup Foods area where the memorial is. We're going to continue to look at Brooklyn Center. But like I said, Rob, they're happy. They call this a victory. There might not be unrest tonight, but they have plans for the future. Some people here identifying themselves as revolutionary communists even. Mm-hmm. So a very diverse crowd in that sense, both, ideologically and otherwise. And it'll be interesting to see what their reaction is going forward.
Yeah, a diverse crowd and a lot of political agenda among that crowd. Again, you never see a scene like this for the countless black men and women that are killed by crime in inner cities in this country. Thousands every single year. Nobody bats an eye. You don't see BLM. You don't see Antifa. Nobody cares. And then as soon as something happens with a police officer, all of a sudden here comes Sharpton and Jesse Jackson, and everybody's got an agenda, and there's money to be made, and there's power to be had, and you have a situation like this. All right, thank you so much, Logan. Good to see you. We'll come back to you as warranted. All right, all this comes, of course, after the verdict was read today by Peter Cahill, the judge. 5:05 Eastern time, it came down this afternoon. The jury had deliberated for just a little more than 10 hours. Pretty quick. Here's the judge.
We, the jury, in the above entitled matter as to count 1, unintentional second-degree murder while committing a felony, find the defendant guilty. This verdict agreed to this 20th day of April, 2021 at 1:44 p.m. Signed, juror foreperson, juror number 19. Same caption, verdict count 2. We, the jury, in the above entitled matter as to count 2, third-degree murder, perpetrating an eminently dangerous act, find the defendant guilty. This verdict agreed to this 20th day of April, 2021 at 1:45 p.m. Signed by jury foreperson, juror number 19. Same caption, verdict count 3. We, the jury, in the above entitled matter as to count 3, second-degree manslaughter, culpable negligence, creating an unreasonable risk, find the defendant guilty. This verdict agreed to this 20th day of April 2021 at 1:45 p.m.
So the camera fixated there on Derek Chauvin. Again, we here at Newsmax don't think Chauvin behaved perfectly or even well that day, but I think we believe George Floyd made a lot of mistakes that day as well. Shortly after Chauvin was taken away in handcuffs, you can see that moment happening here. He stands up, there go the cuffs, and he is led out of the courtroom. He's going to be held without bail, so he's going to be in jail for the next 8 weeks until his sentencing. Sentencing set for 8 weeks from now. Of course, we'll keep you posted on that in mid-June. There was a camera inside the living room of the Floyd family in Houston. Here's the family there. You can see the reaction as the verdict was read. A family of new millionaires now, already paid out by the city, a decision that no doubt affected the outcome of the trial, as the city basically just accepted culpability for this and handed out the family $27 million while the jury selection was being done. President Biden, Vice President Harris addressed the country around 7:30 Eastern Time this evening. Biden using today's verdict to call for more police reform.
No one should be above the law, and today's verdict sends that message. But it's not enough. We can't stop here.
And, of course, Vice President Kamala Harris, who built her entire career around throwing black men in prison for marijuana cases, now says systemic racism is still alive and well in America today.
And this takes acknowledging and confronting head-on systemic racism and the racial disparities that exist in policing and in our criminal justice system more broadly.
This verdict is but a piece of it, and it will not heal the pain that existed for generations, that has existed for generations, among people who have experienced and firsthand witnessed what now a broader public is seeing because of smartphones.
A lot of that pain she inflicted. Don't expect CNN to ask her about that, though. No. Meanwhile, there are still a lot of questions about whether President Biden and Democrats put their thumbs on the scale ahead of the verdict. Of course they did. This was the president earlier today before the verdict came down.
I'm praying the verdict is the right verdict, which is, I think it's overwhelming in my view. I wouldn't say that unless the jury was sequestered now. Not hear me say that.
So obviously the jury was sequestered. They weren't when Maxine Waters made some comments. A lot of other politicians made comments. Of course, there's been the pressure from a number of different groups, including BLM and Antifa, the threat of violence, things like that. Here to provide legal analysis on the verdict itself and all that has surrounded this trial is Harvard Law Professor Emeritus Alan Dershowitz, also author of the book Guilt by Accusation. Sir, thank you so much for taking the time.
Thank you.
So before we dig into the verdict itself, would you say that the rhetoric around this, the rhetoric that we heard from Maxine Waters, maybe not Biden, because as we know, they were sequestered by the time he made comments, but a lot of the rhetoric around this case, the media coverage of this case, and also the threat of violence that we saw all last summer, did that have an impact on this jury?
We certainly cannot be confident that it didn't. I think we have to assume that the jury heard what Maxine Waters said, what Sharpton said, what Krupp said, what others said.
Yep.
I think the jurors knew that if they came out with a verdict other than murder, the top charge, there would be violence on the streets. Every mayor was prepared for that. Every police chief was prepared for that. Why do we think the jury didn't know that and didn't allow it to enter its consideration? After all, the jurors were potential targets. Their names weren't released. If they had come to quote the wrong verdict, they might expect to be treated the way one of the witnesses, for example, before Chauvin was treated. His house, they thought it was his house, it was his former house, was painted with blood. The defense lawyers were threatened. I think the jurors understood that if they didn't come to, quote, the right verdict, they would suffer. Their businesses, their schools, their neighborhoods. This was a case where the thumb, perhaps even the elbow, of external threats was on the scale of justice. That's why I think this case may very well be reversed on appeal by the United States Supreme Court. The judge himself said that there are appellate issues. in this case. So stay tuned. This case is far from over.
Let me just ask you about that real quick, because that to me is the most interesting part of this case, is what happens now in the appeal process. Where would that start? Because I'm not good at lawyer stuff. Where would that start, and when would that be?
It starts right away. An appeal will be filed right after the sentencing. Briefs will be submitted. There are 2 levels of appeal in the Minnesota court system. I don't believe the Minnesota courts will reverse this conviction. I don't think they have the courage to do so any more than the judge had the courage to grant a mistrial, which in his heart of hearts, he knew should have been granted after Maxine Waters made what he regarded as an outrageous statement. But the United States Supreme Court has reversed convictions in cases like this. The Shepard case is the most famous one, but there have been cases involving Southern radicals, white supremacists, who appeared in front of jurors and courtrooms and threatened in the event that a jury acquitted a black man or convicted a white man. And it's ironic that the cases that might be cited in reversing this conviction will be Ku Klux Klan cases, white supremacy cases, cases in the Deep South. But those are the precedents. And it doesn't matter whether you're on the right side or the wrong side of justice. If you try to interfere with a jury deliberation, that denies the jury the opportunity to be fair and neutral and to operate under the rule of law instead of under the pressure of the crowd.
Yeah, these are the kinds of cases that before they became so politicized, I guess the ACLU would have probably loved to jump in on something like this, right?
Oh,
yeah.
ACLU would be in every day. But now the case is to Brooklyn Center, where this woman, Kim Potter, is being absolutely railroaded. There is not a single element of any crime, and yet they're going to push, and they're going to demand, and they're going to get the Attorney General,
and they're going to win. Yeah,
and
let's not be fooled. I think they're going to. I don't think you can lose these cases now, because I don't. Who's going to be the one person, Alan, that says, you know what, I'm going to vote to acquit, and then I'm going to hightail it out of this city tomorrow with my family, and we're going to change our names so that we can exist after trying to acquit this officer? Who's going to do that? Nobody's going to do that.
You know, it happened once back in the Deep South when a man named Leo Frank was falsely convicted of murdering a young woman, and the governor had the courage to commute his sentence. And the governor actually had to leave town and move to California as a result of white supremacists threatening him for commuting the sentence.
Yeah.
And so it will take courage, but no prosecutor worth his or her salt should ever prosecute Potter. Potter did absolutely nothing criminal. She made an honest mistake, a tragic mistake. We all make mistakes.
Right.
It's not crime.
I just want to do this in 10 seconds because I'm totally out of time. As far as what you saw today, all 3 counts guilty, did you think that was justice?
No, I think that the conviction on manslaughter was probably the right conclusion.
Okay.
There was certainly a quotation, but not murder 2 or murder 3.
The lesser charge. He's facing up to 40 years, we understand. Alan Dershowitz, one of the best people to talk to on something like this. Sir, thank you so much for the time.
Thank you.
All right.
Hey, I'm Rob Finnerty. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please join the conversation in the comments below. Don't forget to subscribe, too. Hit the bell icon to be alerted to breaking news. And remember, there's a whole lot more on Newsmax TV, America's fastest growing cable news network. Newsmax TV, we're real news for real people.